or trusted family friend. This is to prevent the couple from doing anything inappropriate. Now, in this way, the woman is protected from scandal and the man's modesty is guarded. So we shouldn't forget at this point the authentic hadith when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said, "One may marry a woman for 4 things: her wealth, her family status, her beauty, or her religion and character." So you should marry the religious woman, otherwise you would be among the losers. Now Muhammad, peace be upon him, recognized that these are 4 reasons are the main ones that men go after, and advised the Muslims that one should look towards a woman's religion and character to find the best suitable wife. Not only that, but he does not include the word love in this list. A lot of people question that heavily, and the answer is very simple. Allah will allow the love between 2 people to grow if they're attracted for the right reasons, whereas the love between 2 people will diminish if they're attracted for the wrong reasons. Many people, Muslim and non-Muslim alike, have wrongly stated that love does not exist in a true Islamic marriage, that it is a formal contract and nothing more like a business transaction. Now, we can clearly see an authentic hadith of Muhammad's life, peace be upon him, and the way that he would treat his wives, and we see this is not the case. He loved them intently throughout the marriage, even if there was little or no love in the beginning. I'm referring specifically to widows that he married out of compassion. He married them out of compassion so that he would provide for them. And he did love them, and they loved him as well. Over time, as I said, Allah allows the love to grow. So right now is about the time we need to get into polygamy, and there's not really any avoiding this issue, and we shouldn't avoid it. Too often Muslims gloss over polygamy because we know the common reaction that non-Muslims will give. Women say, "Oh man, I don't want to be a Muslim because a man can have 4 wives," and the men say, "I want to be a Muslim so I can get 4 wives." Both statements are said in ignorance of how polygamy works in Islam, and Muslims are generally too often abusing this permission from Allah. Now, I did say permission. It's not a rule. A man is allowed to have 4 wives. That's not in dispute. But what we have to look at here is the attitude that a man should take toward this. I said it is a permission because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was gradually perfecting the religion of Islam since the time of Adam, providing slightly increasing changes and guidelines through the prophets so that the religion would not overwhelm humanity. This is the significance of the final revealed verse of the Qur'an, which is chapter 5, verse 3, and states clearly, "On this day have I perfected for you your religion, and completed my favor upon you, and chosen for you Islam as your religion." The concept of polygamy has existed since the beginning of time. According to ancient Jewish texts, Adam is said to have had as many as 5 wives throughout his life. Abraham had at least 2. David had many. Solomon had dozens. In some texts they say hundreds. Now the list goes on and on and on. Polygamy existed for many reasons. First is for reproduction, since child mortality was a big problem for thousands of years until medical science had advanced. Second is because some men are not able to contain themselves to one partner and need another wife or wives to fulfill the sexual drive in a permissible way. Third is a desire for constant companionship. Fourth, to enhance the raising and educating of children. Now, think about this. You know how much a woman knows about the world. And guys, don't get an ego over this. Just admit it. Women know a lot of stuff, okay? Now, combine that knowledge of one woman with the knowledge of 2, 3, or 4 women, and you have a veritable encyclopedia of knowledge to impart upon these children. So, the 5th is to take care of widowed women when there are no suitable single men in the community. 6th is to fill the gender gaps that are always in existence. You know, there was an old song in the 1960s called Surf City that started out with the line, 2 girls for every boy. Now, while there aren't literally 2 women for every man, the reality is that women do outnumber men in practically every country in the world. And in some regions, there are almost 2 women to every man. in some small cities, towns, and such. Now add to this the fact that the men have always been the ones to perform hard labor, serve in the military, and other sorts of hazardous tasks, and you start to get the picture that they're going to end up being a lot of single women in a given society. Should these women be left alone and single for the rest of their days? Or should those men who have the means and ability to provide for more than one wife take on a second, third, or fourth wife so that all women are provided and cared for equally? Now, I know what you're saying. It still looks like men are getting in the better share of things. And you're probably asking, why would a woman want to share her husband with other women? Now, that's a good point. Now, I need to fuss at the men for a minute. Okay, guys and girls, think about this. How many married men there in your neighborhood have mistresses? Think about the number in your family or extended family, in your town, your city, maybe even your country, and then the world. Now, if all these men were Muslim, they would be prohibited from taking a mistress and would have to marry that second woman and provide for her equally and care for any children of hers. The simple fact here is that polygamy already exists in the world, but the way it is now in the non-Muslim world, the men get to run around and have all the fun, while the women have to bear the burden and pay the price. Under Islam, however, a man is commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to provide a household, to provide clothing, food, and all the things of living that each of his wives need, and he must provide it equally one to another. Sometimes co-wives really like each other, and they live in a large house and cooperate together for the betterment of the family. This is the ideal scenario. Most of the time, though, a man must provide a separate house for each wife, must provide furnishings, clothing, etc., and provide things of the same value to each wife. A woman may ask her husband to take a second wife if disability or illness prevents her from fulfilling her duties to her husband. I have known of women who went to find a second wife for the husband because they were physically incapable of providing children. Also, there was one case I know where a man's wife had an emotional breakdown and she could not emotionally, mentally care for the children anymore, and she permitted him to take a second wife to help with the raising of children. Now, I could go on and on showing specific examples, but the bottom line is that the idea of polygamy in Islam is meant to be a mercy to all involved. And that is, of course, because of the obligations that Allah and His Messenger, peace be upon him, have placed upon Muslim men toward their wives. It is true that if a man is failing in this obligation to provide for his first wife, he is prohibited from taking a second wife. Let me say this again. If a man is failing to provide with his wife everything that she needs to live, then he must not take a second wife. But to be fair, we need to outline what that requirement involves. A husband is not required to buy his wife expensive things, though if he does shower her with gifts, it is a charity, and he is rewarded for that. A husband is not required to buy her better things than her neighbor. That is extravagance, and it's to be avoided at all times. A husband is not required to create a status of living that is a degree better than the standard for the larger community that they live in. If a husband is able to provide a living for his wife that is comfortable and gives her the things that she should be able to expect in the society that they live in, at what would be considered a middle class, and if he can then provide exactly the same to another woman, then he is permitted in Islam to take a second wife. However, let's be clear here that the first wife always has the freedom to leave him if she does not approve of his taking the second wife, and the second wife may never demand that her husband divorce his first wife. When a couple gets married,